All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this Monday, July 27th, for our first webinar of the 2025-26 academic year. So thank you for joining us. We have a really great webinar for you guys today. Misty from WSU's Student Financial Services is joining us today, and will be providing an overview of her office's data identification methods for passport eligible students. So yeah, hopefully a lot of good info for you guys to take back and just learn from. But before we introduce her, we'll go ahead and take care of a couple of housekeeping items. So as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded to our Washington Passport Network website, as well as our WPN YouTube channel. And once it's uploaded, we'll be sending out an email to everyone who registered for this webinar with the direct link to that. And if you have any questions throughout this presentation, feel free to drop them in the chat, or we ask that you use the raise hand feature and go ahead and come off mute and ask your question yourself. We'll be monitoring the chat, and there'll also be time at the end for questions. So for today's presenter, it's Misty Lewis from WSU Student Financial Services, who serves as a State Aid Advisor. Welcome, Misty, and I'll go ahead and hand it off to her for introductions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ozzy. So as Ozzy said, I am the State Aid Advisor over here at WSU. So I oversee our state grant programs, including Passport to College. And I work directly with our passport support staff as the designated financial aid advisor to help determine students' eligibility. So just a little bit of kind of background for passport is the program criteria is they have to be a former foster youth, meaning they spent at least 1 day in foster care after the age of 13. Foster care is not limited to state agencies. This can include tribal and federal placements. And then all students confirmed under the state foster youth banner maintain their eligibility if they start college before age 22. Or passport students can also be the unaccompanied homeless youth eligibility. This may fall into two categories. They could be an unaccompanied homeless youth or self-supporting and at risk of homelessness. Homeless means lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing. And unaccompanied means they are not living in the physical custody of their parent or guardian. To be awarded passport based off the UHY definition, a student must have had a homeless event prior to age 22 and cannot be determined in the passport portal by the financial aid administrator after that. And a student who is confirmed in the WSAC passport portal continues to be seen as homeless for the awarding purposes until they take a year off of school. So the Federal Student Aid Handbook, these are the definitions. We're going to look at some case studies here in just a moment. So if you have screenshotting, this may be useful. So the unaccompanied homeless youth criteria is that they could be at risk of homelessness. This means their housing that they currently have may cease to be fixed, regular, and adequate. The homeless of lacking fixed, regular, and adequate housing, with fixed defined as stationary, permanent, and not subject to change. Regular is used on a predictable, routine, or consistent basis, and adequate means they are sufficient for meeting both the physical and psychological needs typically met in the home. And self-supporting is when a student pays for his or her own living expenses, including fixed, regular, and adequate housing. And then that unaccompanied definition of not living in the physical custody of the parent or guardian. Within the Federal Student Aid Handbook, Application Verification Guide, Chapter 5, this is kind of the UHY documentation. So the exact wording, because it's just a quote there, is the documentation for a financial aid administrator's evaluation of the living arrangements of the student must demonstrate that they meet the definition of the category of an independent student. The determination may be based upon the written statement from or a documented interview with the student that confirms that they are an unaccompanied homeless youth or unaccompanied at risk and self-supporting. Such determination should be made without regard to the reason that the student is unaccompanied and or homeless. So there's 3 case studies. they can have some sensitive information. This may be a little bit triggering for individuals. If you are not in a place to do that, it's okay to kind of mute this presentation for a couple minutes. There is another slide at the end that says we are transitioning away from those case studies, and this will be a little bit of a discussion base as we walk through the information that the students have presented us. The following students are real students that have had or not had UHY determinations made on them, not necessarily at WSU. So the first student is Milo, and the statement that Milo would have submitted to a financial aid office is the following. I am writing to you to be granted independent status before I am 24 at the beginning of the semester. Let's start with the reasoning. In June of 2025, I was forced to leave the living arrangements that I was in as it became unstable and unsafe for me to continue to reside there. When leaving, I was able to sleep on my friend's couch for a few weeks while I was able to gain my bearings and what next steps would have to be. I was able to acquire a job outside of the area in early July where I was able to work full-time, but still not have enough money to obtain residence of my own. I had to sleep in my car some nights if I wasn't able to obtain a hotel room. After a few weeks of this, I was able to obtain a temporary living condition of a camper van I was able to acquire from Facebook Marketplace. As I was working to save what I could to be able to get a permanent place to call home. I was just on a week-to-week law arrangement that wouldn't last long. As the semester was coming to a start, I only wished to be counted as my own, as I have spent the last few months being on my own as an independent. So is the student unaccompanied? You can put it in the chat or just shout at me. It's all good.
I believe he's unaccompanied.
Yes, but he is unaccompanied.
Unaccompanied, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so is their housing arrangement fixed?
No, it's not.
Nope, it's not fixed. Is it regular?
No, it's not.
There you go. So they would be unaccompanied homeless because it's not fixed. It's not regular. It's likely not adequate because camper vans and kind of couch surfing a little bit. So the student would be considered an unaccompanied homeless youth. Okay, the next student is Abby. And here's the statement Abby would have provided. My name is Abby, and I feel I meet the definitions of an unaccompanied homeless youth and need financial aid to support my education to become a counselor. My mom is an addict and has been abusive my whole life in and out of rehab. She disappeared about a year ago and hasn't been seen since. In 2023, I started a job as a sales consultant where housing accommodations are provided with Airbnbs. These accommodations are listed in the definition as part of motels. Since then, I have been working as a nanny where I rent a room for $1,000 a month for a room, and someone died on the property and travel with the family throughout Montana. Receiving this aid would not only provide me with the stability and housing and safety I need to focus on my studies, but also give me a chance to create a future where I can give back to the community positively and approach issues head on that I have firsthand experience in, such as a homeless youth. I am especially grateful to have experienced all the things I have and have been able to maintain some aspects of safety in my life that other homeless youth might not have. Seeing firsthand youth around me partake in the substances so early on because it is common practice among homeless individuals saddens me, but also makes me grateful to take the route I did where I never saw substances as an option and knew that I needed to take large measure to ensure myself a future. So is Abby unaccompanied?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
She doesn't
Housing
quite
is
know
not
what a mom
fixed.
is. Housing's not fixed.
Or regular.
And it has to be after July of 2024. So we don't quite have that timeline. Because she says in 2023, she started working as a sales consultant, but then after that, she says she rents a room for $1,000 while she nannies and travels. So on this student, we would likely want to request more of a timeline on where they are at currently and where they have been since July of 2024.
A quick question there, Misty.
Yep.
That's okay.
No, that's all good.
I was just curious. So I know like the idea of possibly experiencing homelessness or being at risk means that someone who you are receiving housing from could, change their mind and ask you to leave at any moment. In this particular case, like if that contract is with an employer, does that same sort of logic apply, or because she's likely paying that she has like renter's rights?
She would likely have renter's rights, but it would depend on what that contract says. Kind of the same thing with the Airbnb of if it says employment was terminated and say she has a write-up, then we may want to evaluate that that write-up exists and there may be unstable housing there.
Okay, gotcha.
Dependencies, but it does get vary into contract law and that renter's rights.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
And that's why these are all evaluated case by case basis, and why I know our office will reach out for additional information like this, where it's like, okay, you told us about 2023, but since then, can we get a more definite timeline of where things are at and maybe what those contracts say? Okay, so Rosie says, I recently lost a baby and I've been really depressed. I was living with a boyfriend on the other side of the state, but losing the baby meant we broke up and I moved back to my parents' house when he shipped everything home and I wasn't allowed to go back. Being at my parents' house was difficult because all I did was cry all day. One day, my parents called a family meeting and my brother Milo and I called me an emotional black hole. That night, my brother grabbed me in my dirty laundry and took me to stay at a friend's house. He says it's not a good situation and I should be around people that can watch me and make sure I eat. I've been staying at a friend's house on their couch and I struggle getting out of bed. Plus, I'm disabled, so finding a job has been difficult. Even all my classes are online to match when I can be awake. So is Rosie unaccompanied?
Yes.
Yes. Is their housing fixed?
Somewhat, but not really.
Somewhat, but not really. Seems like the friend's allowing them to be there, so maybe we don't know. Is it regular?
Yes.
Is it adequate?
No.
So Rosie would be an unaccompanied homeless youth because there is an and in that homeless definition. It has to be fixed, regular, and adequate. So if one of them is missing, then the student would be homeless. So the student is couch surfing, even though they were kind of dropped off there, hasn't been able to go back.
Hi, Misty.
So,
Misty, this is Colleen. I have a quick question about
yeah.
the last two. Is age important and relevant in these two scenarios?
It would be, we assume, well, I assumed, and I probably should have wrote it down, that these students would have been under 24 if they were submitting these scenarios. And then for passport, they have to be under 22. So as part of our documentation process, we do filter by age before we request documents.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, I'll go into that in a future slide, but I definitely should have put it in here. So that is the end of our case studies. If anyone had us muted, now is a great time to kind of come back. Or drink some water, you know how it goes. So WSU's institutional program philosophy is to create the least restrictive environments for students to navigate. We do this by using all available data sources for identification. We use collaborative partnerships with admissions that extend further into the community. We do financial aid trainings for associated staff outside of student financial services. We outreach to campus employers to let them know of potential benefits of hiring passport students. And then we do assistance workshops at applying to resources outside of the university for our students. So how do y'all identify potentially passport eligible students? No one identifies. It's all good. I think that many institutions use the WSAC already confirmed portal, and that's how they identify students. And then a lot of students self-identify into the program. And we worked a little bit to change that because students that don't know what the program is aren't able to self-identify into the program. So we use data identification from 6 primary sources. So the FAFSA-WASFA application, our admissions application, because we have passport support funds and passport support staff, has a question on the application that talks about passport eligibility. We use our scholarship application because students' answers may indicate that they're struggling with homelessness or housing insecurity, but the student doesn't necessarily understand that status. We look through our dependency appeals and provisionally independence process. Our emergency funding requests are often where students are requesting additional funding for housing or housing insecurity or things that may be related to that, like food insecurity. And we're able to look through those processes. And then our satisfactory academic progress appeals, there's often an interconnectedness between academics and the stability of the student's living environment. So at WSU, we are able to build our own queries. We are a PeopleSoft school, and then we use Slate for our admissions portions. And we are able to build queries to identify these students. And that's what I will be talking about in the next couple slides, is what we're querying off of. And with these queries, we have a Passport to College to-do list that we set on students' accounts. So they're able to send us documentation. Students that are identified as potentially eligible but not confirmed in the WSAC passport portal will receive this to-do list. Our office calls it the HY checklist. And when students complete this checklist, they are doing a couple of different things depending on what their eligibility may be. So in this checklist, they could be giving us permission to reach out to DCYF to confirm their former foster youth eligibility, if that's what's pending in the portal. They could be providing documentation from an authorized source, such as their McKinney-Vento letter, or they could be writing a statement of circumstances about where they currently live so that Student Financial Services can make that determination for them. If a student does not have access to the original paperwork showing the original determination, like that McKinney-Vento letter is lost, they can explain their circumstances and SFS will make that determination or reach out to the original entity if the timeline is needed, because we understand that this population doesn't necessarily always have original documentation with them or the ability to reach out and find it. So on the FAFSA and WSFA, they both have questions relating to the Passport to College awarding criteria. Students that select yes to these questions are queried from and then checked in the portal. So if they selected yes, we run all of the names through the portal. If they're confirmed, they're awarded. There is no further documentation needed. If they are pending and under 22, then we set that HY checklist and request the documentation or permissions. So that way we can move forward with the awarding process. And we do this typically in about March, so that way students that are in high school still have access to those counselors. The admissions application, there is a question that asks if a student is Passport to College eligible or if they are interested in learning more. Students that have not appeared in the queries, such as that FAFSA-WSFA one, may appear in this one, and we still run it through the portal and check it to see if they may be eligible. Often this group is students that don't have the FAFSA-WSFA on file. They just haven't completed it. They may need some assistance in completing it, or if they're at the beginning stages of college planning, where they want to talk a little bit about major and maybe if college is the right choice for them. Students that are confirmed in the WSAC portal, but not on their FAFSA-WSFA, we will use that confirmation to do the corrections on the FAFSA-WSFA and not make students get additional paperwork in order to be considered that independent. On our general scholarship application, because WSU has one for almost all of the scholarships at WSU, but not all of them. There are 2 questions where students will sometimes disclose information on housing insecurity. The one is talk about your experience handling adversity, and the other question is how do you handle systematic challenges? On that scholarship application, all the applicants are reviewed by members of our scholarship team, and when they come across information that may be related to passport, whether it be housing or foster care, they forward the ID to our passport team to review. If a student can be awarded based off the provided scholarship essays, then they are. And if there's still a little bit of missing information, which is usually timelines, then they are assigned that Passport to College to-do list. that HY checklist, and they submit the additional documentation there. The dependency appeal and provisionally independent status. So this is what happens when FAFSAs come through in kind of an incomplete status. They don't have a determination from a different entity, or maybe they checked unusual circumstances on the FAFSA. So students that are stating they have housing insecurity, but have not received a determination from another source will come through our office and we will make that determination. And then that unusual circumstance, sometimes students don't quite know that they're homeless and they're asked to provide some corroborating letters, and in those letters it may be a homeless determination. Because oftentimes students will think that, oh, I'm sleeping on a friend's couch. That isn't the same as sleeping in my car. I must not be homeless. And once they come through those teams, they're also forwarded to our passport team in order to check for eligibility there. On our SAP appeals, these are satisfactory academic progress. These are checked at the end of every semester to see how a student is progressing in their degree and if they are meeting state and federal standards to continue receiving financial aid. Students who are not meeting these standards may be disqualified from receiving aid, but they're given an opportunity to appeal for financial aid. In these appeals, students often describe what is currently happening in their life, and sometimes these circumstances are housing related. When our SAP committee comes across these students, they forward it to the passport coordinator for review. And then the review process is often similar to that with the scholarships, where if passport can be awarded based off of the SAP appeal, it is awarded based off that SAP appeal, and students don't have to submit additional documentation. We also have referral identification. This happens outside of our queries, but with our community partners. So our dean of students, our care case managers may be interacting with students prior to any SFS data points or outside of it. And they're able to refer them back to SFS for passport to college eligibility, as well as any additional resources that we may be able to provide for students. Local organizers and caseworkers are local organizations that may be providing services to the students related to passport, and then they refer the students to SFS. Students themselves, so oftentimes students in the program may have friends going through similar circumstances, and they're able to recommend that they reach out and work with our office or our designated support staff. And then other student affairs staff in other student-facing positions, whether that be academic advisors or professors or even just mentors or coaches, may have students disclosing housing insecurity to them during those interactions. And so that staff will also recommend them either to the Dean of Students Care Case Managers and then to SFS or directly to SFS. So another question for everyone, how do you guys track continuing students? So if your student was here in the 24-25 academic year, how do you keep track of them over to the 25 year, or if they take a semester off? It's okay. It's after lunch.
Can you repeat the question, Misty?
Yeah. So how do you track continuing students? So if students have been here and then they're going to be here next year, or if they take a semester off, how do you kind of keep track of them and make sure all of them are getting awarded, and if they need FAFSA help completion or something like that?
We just we do sort of grade checks at the end of each quarter and the end of each academic year. And then if for financial aid, we would just be reviewing their financial aid award each fall just to make sure it's on there.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty solid. I think that's one of the more common ones, or they're like, they had passport last year, they'll get it again this year, but when students take time out, sometimes it's a little more difficult. So we moved to a system of what we call the passport to college packaging variable. So this is something that happens on the back end of the financial aid side. We set what's called a packaging variable to keep track of these students. This variable is set when students are confirmed in the portal and have available QER. So if they're run out of passport eligibility, then it is unselected. And we use this in our packaging system so that students who return may see passport in their initial award rather than sometimes later or maybe falling through the system. And it's often dependent on when we know how much the passport award will be. Sometimes it's a little bit later and we're able to mass post. So students aren't waiting on us As soon as our office knows, the students know how much Passport is. WSU does have auto packaging though, and we do have full autonomy over our packaging and financial aid awarding process, meaning we are able to post a lot of those and have access to backend systems. And here are some additional supports that WSU provides for our Passport students in order to help them kind of navigate higher education. Our designated support staff has emergency fundings for students who participate in the support program. So this is emergency funding that can be applied to emergent needs, as well as course-related needs like books, or if maybe they need snow boots. Priority class registration, so Passport students are able to kind of register first in line and get all of their classes. There's personalized mentoring and advising. There's financial literacy courses and workshops, and these include FAFSA filing, scholarship application nights, as well as budgeting courses. And then assistance applying for food assistance. So students will meet with their mentor and help fill out the application for food assistance and help them navigate that process. SFS has worked really hard with our designated support staff to provide some outreach queries for our support staff, and there's two primary queries. The one is potentially eligible students. So these are those students with that HY to-do list on their account. And this allows our support staff to reach out to students that are identified and maybe help them understand what the Passport program is, or if they need any assistance finding and submitting the documentation that we need to award. This includes campus breakdowns, so that way individual campus staffs can reach out to students. Because we found that students often want to go into an office, they want to meet with a person, and they want to know who that person is. So a student at our Vancouver campus may not want to submit to the Pullman office because I may be a faceless person, and that's a really scary event for them. And so if it's the Vancouver campus that they work with, then they know exactly who Carmen is. And then we also have the Passport to College packaging variable query. So this queries off students that have that packaging variable. They're going to get the award. And this is provided to our support staff to help them assist students that are currently in the program that may need a nudge to help complete things like the WSU scholarship application. Maybe their FAFSA WASPA isn't on file. Maybe they need to complete a SAP appeal, or they're in verification. This query also tells our Passport support staff how many credits the students are in. It's a 6 credit minimum at WSU for Passport. So to kind of maybe nudge or remind students that, hey, you're not going to get the Passport scholarship this semester because you're only in 3. It also tells them what campus the students are on, so that way they can have campus specific events that may help the students connect with their community. And then it has the student emails, so that way they know directly how to reach out to them outside of their WSU email, because a lot of times students may be checking only their personal email, and they can adjust those preferences and the query would update based on those preferences. So the dedicated financial advisor, these are services I provide directly to the students, is I host biweekly drop-in office hours in a familiar location. This is with our designated support staff space. So students are in a comfortable and familiar environment. This is where they're already meeting with their mentors, and this is where they can see their financial aid staff as well. And oftentimes the mentors will walk the student over to the financial aid staff and be like, hi, this is my friend Misty. She can help you with this problem you've been telling me about. And then we're able to sit down and work through that issue. There's also a dedicated financial aid email box that Passport students may use so that they are working directly with me because I am familiar with their unique concerns and can kind of assist and guide them because they may have multiple things going on at their account at once. And then during our new COOC orientation, this is the mandatory new student orientation. Our Passport scholars are often meeting with our designated support staff to register for classes and learn more about the program. Student Financial Services pairs with the support staff to attend these sessions and answer any potential financial aid questions, because oftentimes that was a big question that was coming up. It was, what classes am I taking and can I pay for these classes? So it helps to kind of help walk through what their financial aid package is going to look like. And then occasionally this is where potentially eligible students are able to be confirmed through those interviews, and maybe they bring their letters or they were able to write a statement while we sit there and we can get the Passport confirmation done. So we also have assistance with verification. This is a process kind of like a baby audit on the FAFSA where we select students for additional information. The verification that Passport is able to assist with is that WSU students that have been selected for foster care, ward of the court, or orphan on their FAFSA-WASFA for verification during their first FAFSA-WASFA submission at WSU, we are able to provide documentation for that. And then students may be in verification due to provisionally independent status on the FAFSA-WASFA. So when they're filling it out, they may have additional letters, they may come from different schools, their passport confirmed. But when they filled out the FAFSA, they selected they didn't have a determination from an authorized entity, so it came through as provisionally independent. If a student is confirmed in the Passport to College portal, we use that documentation to provide confirmation and verification on the FAFSA-WASFA. And this helps students a little bit because they may be pending foster care, and the portal will reach out to DCYF. That way our students don't have to reach out to the caseworkers. We know that they're really busy and it can be difficult to track down, especially with how high turnover can be sometimes. And that way students are able to know what their financial aid offer is sooner and be more proactive in their approach to their financial planning. And then the last thing is we have priority work study for our students. And work study is a paid as you earn reward. Therefore, only students with need, according to the FAFSA or WASFA, and an eligible job can have work study. It's often a limited resource at universities because each school is allotted a set amount per year, and it can be tied to on-time deadlines as well. And according to state statute, Passport students get priority state work study funding. So in order to comply with this, WSU posts work study in the initial aid package prior to the start of the semester for our Passport students. All other students, once they're employed, their employer sends an authorization in order to start using that work study funding. And then employers can quickly claim this funding. So typically the employers wait a month while we work on the process. It can be a little bit of a backlog, especially at the start of semesters. And during that month, while they wait for approval to use work study, students aren't always working. So our Passport students are able to start working immediately using their work study funding. And this also helps students become more aware of work study as a resource. All right. Is there any questions?
Misty, there was a question in the chat, and I'm sorry if I missed it, but I don't know if you got around to answering it or not.
I did not. The wording on the admissions application, I have seen it, but it's been a little while. It's, are you an unaccompanied homeless youth or former foster youth? Are you interested in Passport to College? Is this program for these categories? Are you interested in learning more, or do you fit in these categories? I believe is what it says. It's the one that's in the WSAC manual, I believe.
That was my question, Misty. I was curious if you just use the same wording in the manual or if you have your own.
I believe we're using the same wording in the manual. The admissions data is primarily handled by our designated support staff, and then they share it with us so that way we can process what we need to process from it.
I might reach out to you on the side just to see if you can send it to me, if you can.
Okay. Yeah.
Just a curious, yeah, because we're thinking of rewording ours, so.
Okay. Yeah.
Any other questions for Misty?
I have another question, and everybody else does. Misty, can you say more about your the checklist? And I guess one, if I know you said it, but just repeating exactly what's on the checklist, curious who it comes from and how students receive it.
Yeah. Just a sec. So it's SFS is who sets the checklist, and when they log into their MyWSU account, there is a to-do list tile, and it can come from any department in the university, like Academics can put it in there as well, like, hey, please turn in your paperwork. Oftentimes what's there is the vaccination records, is a very common one. And I can read you the language on the form. I gotta pull it up. And so it's like, hi, you've been selected. And we send out a notification email as well that says that the student has been selected. Something they told us at some point indicates that they may fit into this category and we'd like to know more information. It's alphabetical and I don't know my ABCs, sorry. So it says, per our records, you indicated on your financial aid application that you either former foster youth, an unaccompanied homeless youth, or a self-supporting at-risk. As a Washington resident, in-state students, in this situation, you may be eligible to passport to college. This grant program from the state of Washington helps former foster youth and unaccompanied homeless youth prepare for and succeed in college. Though passport to college students receive this grant and additional services from dedicated support staff at Washington State University, funds can be used for tuition, fees, books, housing, transportation, and some personal expenses. In order to verify your eligibility, we need some additional documentation from you. Then they log in and there's 3 buttons and it's a smart form. So when you select the buttons, it'll kind of change what the form is. If they select former foster youth, there's a little section that's a legal disclosure that says, by checking this, you give us permission to reach out to this. Here's the timeline that you should expect to hear back from us. And if you don't, here's the contact person, because sometimes things get a little stuck. And then the unaccompanied homeless youth also breaks out, and it breaks out into those definitions and who the supports may be that you may already have a letter from. And then they can select, I already have my status determined, or I have not had my status determined. And if they have their status determined, it has an upload box. And if they have not, it also has an upload box, but it has a form that's like, okay, where are you sleeping? And then the third option on that first one is, neither of the above categories fit me. I made a mistake on my FAFSA and WSPA. And then it breaks down to a, hey, if you're not these categories, please go change your FAFSA. You're not passport eligible, and they may not be independent. So please go review your FAFSA. And then they have to certify that all of the above information is true and correct, and, you know, penalties for perjury. And then they also get an email telling them that they have that to-do list. And in that email, it kind of walks them through what the definitions are and that, hey, somewhere you told someone something. Is that everything? Everyone good?
Last call for questions. All right, well, thank you very much, Misty. We really appreciate you joining us today and sharing this valuable information. If anyone thinks of any questions for Misty, feel free to reach out to us at passport@collegesuccessfoundation.org. I'll drop it in the chat as well. As a reminder to this recording, once it's uploaded, I'll be sending out an email to everyone with the direct link to it in case you want to reference it later on or share it with your peers. And I also wanted to just remind everyone to keep an eye out for the WPN Navigator newsletter that goes out every other week, just for any updates, upcoming events, future webinars. And if you're not signed up for that or don't know if you are, please reach out to us and we'll make sure you're added to that email list. And yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And yeah, take care.